Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's that time once again. Time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, we have a few basketball questions to get to this week, but basketball season over now for the women and the men.
Yeah, the workload goes down a little bit. We can actually focus more on football now and baseball.
Spring football and baseball and softball, and I'm excited to get to put all of our efforts into those. But we are going to answer some of your basketball questions, and our first question is going to be from S. Giles, who asked, did we turn back into that other team in the UConn game? I'd hoped that the problems were fixed, but the basketball team went back to the same questionable defense and missing three-point shots we've seen so many times before.
Yeah, that's a little rough on them, I think. Frustration on the part of that person, male or female, I'm not sure. But look, yeah, they did look a little bit like they did look, but I think you have to give the opponent a lot of credit. I think UConn was the team Arkansas didn't want to play. I think I talked about that before. After being wrong about some other games, and like Kansas, I turned out to be right about that one because I said it was going to be a tough matchup because of their size and their ability to score inside, but their three-point shooting too. It just stretched Arkansas too much. But the overlooked part of that game was UConn's defense. They just shut. This was not, in a lot of games this year, we saw Arkansas being lazy and shooting three-point shots because they didn't want to work to get it inside. They tried in this game, and so many times were just shut out and were forced because of the shot clock to go ahead and shoot a jumper. And if the shots had been falling in that game, might have had a chance, but they weren't. I think reading the reaction of a lot of Razorback fans after that game, I give them a lot of credit. Arkansas fans, look, this has been a basketball school all the way back to the late 70s. This is not some bunch of Alabama guys that have just suddenly discovered basketball. Arkansas fans are savvy. Their fathers and grandfathers watched Arkansas basketball, and they know a good team when they see one. And I think the general reaction I saw on social media after that game was, wow, UConn was really, really good. They're probably going to win it all. Now, as crazy as it is this year, who knows what's going to happen in the Final Four, because every time I think somebody's in, like Texas, they're not in.
Nope. It's a weird Final Four.
I do think that most Razorback fans understood how good UConn was, and I think most fans are saying, okay, it was a better season in the end than we hoped. Yeah, it was disappointing, ups and downs, but yeah, we sort of understand the youth and all that stuff. And yeah, they ran into a really good team, and it's no disgrace to lose to those guys. And again, look what happened to Gonzaga in the next round. Boom!
They got whacked by
They
them.
got beat worse than Arkansas did. And if you look at UConn's wins in the NCAA tournament, the average is about what Arkansas got beat by. It's not like they just killed Arkansas and had some close games. They've been whacking everybody like that.
They really have. I love what Ricky Council said in the locker room. As much as the team was sad and they were upset over having lost like that, Ricky Council had a great perspective. He was like, this is the most complete team we have played all season long. You know, we were prepared for them, but I just don't, they were just good.
Yep.
How do you overcome just a team being so good like that? And like you said, you brought up all the points of why UConn whapped on Arkansas like that, but they were just a really good team. I think they can win it all, Mike. I mean, against
see.
what? FAU, Miami, San Diego State?
Yep, we'll see.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Do you think Arkansas fans would be happier if UConn won it all?
Yes.
Yes.
They always want to be able to say that the national champions are the team that knocked you out.
Yes, for sure. Slobber Slob says, what a season, from we're going to win it all to are we going to even make the tournament? They played their hearts out and I was entertained. Sure, some games were better than others, but I love them then, now, and next season.
Yeah, that's the typical response. That's what I mostly saw. Maybe not quite as gushy as that, but,
they were
but most
nice.
people certainly understood and they weren't mad. So this is a good post. And it's not really a question, is it? He's just making a statement, or he or she is just, I hate to think that Slobber Slog was a female, but maybe, maybe Slobber Slog is, Slob is, I don't know. But, that's a good statement. That's a good attitude. And I think, again, a lot of Razorback fans, basketball fans are pretty smart. I think Razorback basketball fans are smarter basketball fans than they are football fans.
Yeah.
You always can tell the dumb part of the fan. If you got a dumb fan base, they just go nuts over everything. You know, just get mad. Thought football was going to be really good this year. What happened? And they're just freaking out. Arkansas is used to being good in basketball. They don't freak out as much.
What would you say that fan base is that you're alluding to there? Is there an SEC fan base that's like that?
Yes.
You're not going to say it?
More than one.
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few of those. I think you're exactly right on that. It was funny because I tweeted my bracket out, Mike, and I predicted that Arkansas would upset Kansas, but I had UConn beating them in the next round. A lot of people saw that in my bracket, and they said, well, I don't like who you have beating us. I said, go watch UConn.
Yep.
Go watch their highlights from this year. We both knew. We were sitting there like, I don't like this one. Blood Red Hog asks, who do you predict will come back for Coach Muss next year? I assume Smith and Black will leave, but what about Council, Walsh, and Trevin? You can't transfer a third time due to a new rule, correct?
Well, you can transfer. You just can't. You have to sit out.
Yeah.
So after your first transfer, which you can be immediately eligible, after that you got to sit out. And the feeling is most guys aren't going to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, late in their career, you're not going to transfer and sit out a year and go back to the old way of doing things. So who's going to leave this basketball program? Let's talk about Nick Smith Jr. and Anthony Black, because I think both of them have been messing with the fan base a little bit.
You saw what Anthony Black
Yes.
tweeted, right?
Well, he puts these kind of collage of celebration pictures,
Yeah.
and then you got year one under it.
I know.
And that means people are going, is there a year two?
Yeah, but he did that at the beginning of the season, too. He did put year one on his pictures in the beginning of the year, too.
Still doing it. But
Still doing it.
I don't think he's coming back. And then Nick Smith Jr. was asked last week a question about, somebody said something about, well, going to the NBA, and he said, how do you know that? I don't know that.
Yeah.
So I think they're both sort of being coy about that. So I think they're gone. I know that being in the post-game locker room, you told me your general impression was that Ricky Council is not coming back. He just was very evasive when he was asked.
Yeah, the way he answered, Mike, and you can go actually watch these post-game interviews on our YouTube page, but the way he answered it when he was like, are you coming back? He goes, I don't have an answer to that at this time. Like, he was so quick to say it.
Right. So that's the impression you have of him. Devo, a lot of questions about Devo. I've had a guy call me up and say he's gone. It's a guy I've known for years. He thinks he's gone. I think he's wrong about that. I think when Musselman grabs a hold of this guy and says he's like my own son, and I was talking to somebody that knows basketball pretty well, and he said, are you kidding me? Do you think Musselman won't do everything he can to keep, Devo still here? Because he needs, this year more than anything else, proves you have to have leadership. Next year he would be a senior with 3 NCAA tournaments behind him. You need that. So I think unless he wants to go, and there's no indication right to me that I've seen that he does, I sort of think he'll be back. Now, Trevin Brazile, that's a little tough. Most people are assuming he's back. We just went and checked the latest boards, and they don't have him on there, right?
No, they don't have him in
So
any
they don't
NBA
have him
draft
on there.
projections.
What I was told by somebody that knows this pretty good, we'll just say it's Kevin McPherson.
Kevin McPherson.
And he's our basketball recruiting guru and overall basketball guru. And he said, look, if any one of those NBA teams does what they did with Jalen Williams last year, which was contact him and say, hey, we'll give you second round money and it'll be good. We'll give you good second round money. He'll probably go.
Yeah.
So he said, all it would take is one of them to do that. Now, will they do it? He said, well, that's a 1 in 31 chance, right? So we'll see. But I think he's back, but you can't just say he is. Okay, now let's get into the Mitchell brothers and Jalen Graham.
Yeah.
They can come back. Musselman seemed to be perturbed at them at various times in the season. So that tends to make you think they might not be back. He's got Bay Fall coming in, who's a 7'1" center, true center, freshman. Or not a true center, he's more of a forward type, but he's a true freshman. If Brazile comes back, and then there's all kinds of speculation, he's going to go out and try to get a true center, a guy like UConn had. Isn't it interesting that what you see with recruiting with Musselman is whatever problem there was the year before, he's going to go out and solve that problem the next year. So if you say, hey, we really lacked a beast inside, which is one of the two things they needed, well, maybe you'll go get a beast, like a 250-pound guy, 6'11". And then the other thing would be what? You got to have shooters. So that's what people think. So if that's the case, then maybe you let those three other forwards go. And then nobody knows what's going to happen with the three freshmen this year. I mean, they might look and say, well, I didn't play hardly at all this year. I'm looking ahead to next year and I still don't see it. So they might transfer on their own. So that's as close as I can come to giving you an answer. The only one we probably feel like we know is gone besides Black and Nick Smith Jr. is Ricky Council, and we're not sure about that. But
no.
We feel, and then I sort of feel like the Mitchell brothers and Jalen Graham might be gone. Okay. I'd give it about a 50-50 on that.
And they have an extra year because they redshirted,
they
right?
Did.
That
they
was
did.
right? Yeah.
They have an extra year.
Yeah. Razor Alex 88 says, oh, how satisfying it was to see San Diego State send Bama home. It's going to be a very interesting Final Four and national championship game. I agree with that statement.
So there's two parts of that. Let's explore part number one, which is ha ha ha, Alabama lost.
I love how you said
this
that.
Just isn't an Arkansas fan reaction. This was a reaction all over the country. I tried to put myself in the position of Alabama fans, Alabama basketball fans, and their team and their coaching staff, because they pretty much had everybody rooting against them.
Everyone.
No, I didn't hardly see anybody coming to their defense that wasn't an Alabama fan. Why? Because it was just so obvious that you have a guy, maybe he wasn't criminally charged, but you just can't say he wasn't involved. And even though he's not involved from a legal standpoint, what kind of rules and standards do you have on your team? Are you sending a message, Nate Oates, that we have to win, and I'm not going to suspend a guy for a single game even though there's some questions going on here? I mean, he basically acted like nothing happened there.
Yeah, wrong place, wrong time.
Wrong place. And even to the point where I think when Nick Saban had a problem with one of his guys, he stepped in and said there's no such thing as wrong place, wrong time.
And he suspended him.
And I think the reason he did that was he wanted, I think Nick Saban has more sense than anybody on that basketball team that's running show, anybody in administration, because I think he sensed this could go against us. This might even hurt us some in recruiting.
I think it is.
So I'm sending a message that that's not the way we operate with our football team. And so look what they ran into. You know, what I got from Alabama when I started reading a lot of the stuff they were saying is they were full bore, we're going to win a national championship. Well, what happens now? You didn't. And everybody was against you. So where do we go from there now? What do you do next year? What is your reaction? Do you, at some point, if you're Nate Oates, do you sit back and say, yeah, I probably made a mistake? That probably wasn't a good idea. Are they going to backtrack on any of this, or are they just going to act like full board, move ahead, that never happened, we're not worried, nothing was wrong there? Don't look here. You were wrong.
Nothing to see.
We're right. I don't know where they're going, but I do know what happened to them, which was they had everybody against them but their own fans. Now, the other part of that, the Final Four, oh, my goodness, that is so interesting. I've talked about this before. In the NCAA tournament, upsets tend to happen early. And each time you go to, you know, the first weekend to the second weekend, they usually drop off, and definitely not by the time you're going to the Final Four. You hardly ever see this many teams in the Final Four that you're going, what? Now, the issue is, what does that mean? Because what I'm reading from a lot of fans is this is terrible. I'm not even going to watch.
What?
Yeah, because they say it's going to be boring. Because UConn's going to kill these teams, and it's not fun, and it's not going to be competitive.
Well, you don't know that.
And I will tell you, I believe the network people don't like it. Because these teams don't have big fan bases. It's not like you've got.
You have two teams from Florida as well, so you have just Florida.
And you don't have a Kansas in there. You don't have a Duke in there. You don't have this national fan base. Even if there are teams that even if you're not a fan of them, you know who they are, so you tend to watch them if they're playing. The network people aren't going to have that. So I'm pretty sure they're not real happy. They're not going to come out and say it, but I'm pretty sure they're not happy with this Final Four and the makeup of it. And I'm seeing a lot of fans that I'm reading on social media. I'm not watching this, it's boring. I'm sitting here saying to myself, does anyone remember, and I don't know how long ago this was, because time when you get my age, it all comes together. You're like, how long ago was that? 10 years, 2 years, 8 years? I don't know. But anybody remember Hoosiers?
Yes.
What was the story of Hoosiers? I've said this before. I was a kid when that happened. I was 5 years old when that happened. And my grandparents lived in Indianapolis. And the year after that happened, the next year, we were up there for Christmas, and my dad took me down to Butler Fieldhouse where that game was played.
No way.
He did, and he told me what happened, and he showed me, and he talked about this little, it was Milan High School, not Hickory or whatever they called them, but he said, this is the way it is, this little bitty school with this little enrollment took on this big giant school, and it had never happened before, and they won the game. Yeah. So it's a real story.
Yeah.
And when they made a movie out of it, and even though they had to jazz it up some with the hickory dickory and all that, and Jimmy and Bobby Plump becomes Jimmy Chitwood, which sounds a lot better than Bobby Fat Guy Plump. What does that mean? You're a fat guy? I don't know. He wasn't fat, but you know, movies they take and change things, and you had to have the coach, you know, with his girlfriend who didn't like him at the start.
Well, they Hollywooded it up, you know.
But it was a real story that really happened, and people loved it. And now you're going to say, you are going to sit there and tell me that if Florida Atlantic wins the national championship, you're not going to think that's a big deal? I'm going to be going, wow.
It's a huge deal.
Now, the general perception of Florida Atlantic is they're a bunch of bumpkins that they just barely got in, and oh, this is stupid. No, they haven't lost a game in 6 weeks. They haven't lost a game since the middle of February.
Yeah, they're peaking at the right time.
I mean, they have one bad loss on their schedule. They've lost 3 games, and one of them was to Ole Miss, second game of the year. Who knows why that happened? Because Ole Miss is terrible, but that's it. That's the only negative. And so I'm thinking, hey, they might pull this off. Who knows? UConn might start thinking, oh, we're UConn. And then these guys just overachieve again. All I know is they haven't lost since the middle of February. So I like this. If you don't like it, don't watch. I'll watch it.
Oh, I'll watch it too. I mean, how can you not like it? You're literally, who are you rooting for? Because everyone always roots for a Cinderella team, right, in the Final Four. Everyone says, oh, we're rooting for this team. But who do you root for? Because they're all kind of like, oh, well, this team has this and this team has this.
I'm not going to root for UConn because I don't like their coach. He's a smart aleck.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously, we're not rooting for UConn. But, like, well, I don't like Miami either. So that gives me Florida Atlantic, basically. I don't like any Florida schools. So I don't know. Maybe Florida Atlantic. We'll go with that one. Yeah. Hog Redneck says, are Alabama basketball fans the dumbest out there or what? Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama each lost in the Sweet 16, but the Bama dummies are saying they went farther because Arkansas and Tennessee played on Thursday while Bama played on Friday.
Yeah, I guess they haven't gotten the concept, which has been around for like as long as they've had the NCAA tournament, that when you have a round, first round, you split them up. Yeah. Half the games are played on Thursday, the next are played on Friday, and then when you advance, half the games are played on Saturday. And so just because you lose on Sunday as opposed to Saturday doesn't mean you advance farther into the tournament, dummies. They just don't get this. I will give them a little bit of a pass because they clearly haven't paid any attention to basketball until this year when their football team didn't win a national championship. So they thought, hey, we'll win it in basketball and it'll be cool. But you don't know anything about basketball. You're football fans.
I just don't get that logic there. That's not sound
logic. That's what they were tweeting out. We went farther than anybody in the SEC, and they didn't. So
wow.
Tennessee and Arkansas, same round. So, you know, whatever.
Bama, I don't know what you're thinking there. Hog Dogger says, seems like Hogs had a technical foul in almost every game this season. How many technical fouls have they had, and is this the most for a Razorback team ever?
Well,
every game this season?
Yeah, no. I went back and charted, looked at the box score for every game. It actually was less than one every other game. 14 technicals in 36 games. So that's less than one every other game. And to put it in perspective, if you think that's an unusual amount, their opponents got 12. So you got 2 more than your opponents. Yeah. I don't think that was out of line. Kamani Johnson got the most. He had 3. Eric Musselman got 2. And there were 2, Jordan Walsh, Devo Davis, and Anthony Black got 2. So, you know, nobody got an inordinate number of technicals. Devo got his all in one game. And as far as how that compares all time, are you kidding me? Some of these people that put in these questions must think I have a research staff of 50 people, because I'm not going back through every box score of every Razorback season and try to compare it to this or that. But just this one, it's not, to me, it doesn't sound like an inordinate number if it's less than 1 every other game.
You know who might be able to answer that? Hog Stats on Twitter.
Yeah.
If you tweet that at them, they will probably be able to find that.
They will probably answer it, but I don't have that time. I've got other things I have to do.
You have to answer all of these questions, Mike. I get it. Mousetown wants to know, why can't Hog fans have anything nice? I'm just getting over the Sweet 16 blowout loss when we take down #1 LSU in their stadium. So what happens next? And then it continues. I'm sorry. The question continues. They outscore us 26-7 in a doubleheader. It was a total butt kicking. Now I'm freaking out again.
Be grateful for the Friday win, because that helps you avoid a sweep. And I'm telling you, there will be a lot of teams that go into Baton Rouge this year and get swept. Yeah. I sort of feel like when I talk about LSU is the way we were talking about UConn. I mean, when you see these guys in person, you realize just how good they are. Friday was a false picture. Friday you went with your 2 best pitchers, which helps a lot. We see that. And I think Arkansas hit a little better in that game. They hit the long ball better anyway in that game. I think what you see, the thing that should be concerning about that game too, is what happens right now against a good team once you get past day 1. Because if Will McIntyre doesn't pitch well, and he's your Saturday guy, if McIntyre doesn't, and then you got Ledbetter who's struggling, you've got Zach Morris who's struggling. Those guys all had ERAs in the 2s last year, and they're up into the 7s and 8s. So if they don't come back somehow, if they don't move back to where they were, then that leaves Dave Van Horn trying to use a bunch of freshmen. And that's not a good sign. So as good a start as Arkansas got off to, and as good at the plate as they are, that's what concerns me, is what that LSU game revealed in games 2 and 3. Because if you think LSU is the only team anywhere near that good in the SEC, well, here's the thing. Arkansas is still tied with LSU for first in the West. I think they're both 5th overall.
Yeah.
There are 4 teams in the East with better records than those, including 2 that are undefeated. We'll have to see how the season plays out and see how good those teams in the East are. But I have a feeling Arkansas is going to be playing some teams that, while they might not be quite as good as LSU, they're pretty close. And that's where I'm worried about the pitching. And you can't do anything about that. When you lose 3 guys, 2 out for the year, 3 of maybe your top 5 pitchers, there aren't too many teams that can survive that. And if that turns out to be the case, then what are we talking about here? We're talking about 2 years in a row, or is it 2 years in a row where you lose your Friday starter before the season ever starts? Arkansas's got a run of bad luck. It needs to turn the other way. And if they can overcome this, Dave Van Horn will have done his best coaching job. I believe that.
I believe that too. I haven't looked at the rankings today, Mike, for baseball, but is LSU still #1? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure they would be.
Pretty sure they would be after that. But, I mean, they're also the #1 team in the nation for a reason. I think when you talk about going into Baton Rouge and getting away with 1 win and not getting swept.
Their pitching is just really deep and really good. Arkansas ran into 1 pitcher the first day when I think, they conceded that first game, and they brought in a guy with an ERA of 6, and he's the one Arkansas teed off on. From that point on, nobody really gave up a lot of runs to Arkansas. Yeah. So their pitching is good. We know their hitting is good, and I think maybe we got a little bit of a false look at Arkansas's pitching. I mean, you're looking at some guys that probably are a little bit better than what we saw. just because when you're facing a lineup that good, they can make you look bad in a hurry.
They really can. Anthony Cameron says, I can't wait to watch LSU run through everyone in the regular season, earn the #1 overall seed, and not make it to Omaha. It's a tale as old as time.
Well, it's certainly the tale of the previous 2 seasons. If you remember, in 2021, Arkansas was #1 for every week of the season, I think, but the first one.
Yeah.
So that's almost the entire season, and then they didn't make it to Omaha, didn't get out of the Supers.
Yeah.
Last year, remember how dominant Tennessee was? We were saying, are they going to lose? They just kept beating everybody.
Yeah.
And we thought, wow, I mean, they're a lock to go to the College World Series and win it all, and then they didn't even make it either. So if LSU makes it 3 years in a row, it'd be fine with me.
Yeah, all right. Eddie
It could
Lynn.
be the kiss of death.
Give them the kiss of death. Make them #1 for the whole season
That's
long.
right.
We'll take it. Eddie Lynn says there were warnings from the umps on 2 bat flips in the LSU series, one against Arkansas and one against LSU. The question continues. Both times the SEC announcer said, let the kids have fun. To me, there are other ways to have fun than showboating.
This guy sounds like he's as old as me, because I sort of have that attitude myself, and I know it's probably wrong in today's modern world. If you go back to when I was an athlete and even early on, young man watching a lot of sports, you didn't see a lot of that kind of stuff. Today, it's the bat flip to me is not what's bad, but here's what I think's going on. I think the stuff that Tennessee did last year, remember all the nutty stuff they were doing when a guy hits a home run, they'd bring out they'd crown a guy,
Yeah, they would do,
a jacket.
Yeah, they would do all this
They
other
did all this
stuff.
big ceremony out in front of the dugout. It took like 10 or 15, 20 extra seconds, and you're going, this is disrespectful. But nobody did anything about it. The umps didn't step in and do anything. I would have warned them and then said, you do it again, you're out. But I think the SEC is coming back this year and over kind of doing it. And the umps have been told, dial this stuff back, because what are they worried about? They don't want any major league type brawls on the college level. That wouldn't look good. So for that reason, even though they probably, you know, the bat flips aren't that, but especially if you don't bat flip toward the other team.
Yeah.
It seems okay to me, but I understand why they're doing it.
And I also feel like the way you said that with Tennessee doing all their other stuff, it makes the game longer as well. Like, you know, I mean, they're trying to avoid that.
Well, it was ridiculous.
It was just like 10, 15 seconds of like, what are we doing here? Pigsby asked, do you think college bats or baseballs are juiced this year? When my son played college baseball a few years ago, the bats were intentionally deadened, more like wood bats. From what I have seen this year, and especially at LSU, something has changed. Either that or LSU is better than many MLB teams. I personally prefer the old game with wooden bats and non-altered balls.
Well, I'm not sure what's up. Nobody's said anything about that. I haven't read any articles or anything about that yet. Usually something like that wouldn't come out till after the season was over, but the numbers are definitely up. Right now in the SEC, there are 10 batters around the league that are hitting over 400, and one of them's hitting over 500, and that LSU kid's now approaching 600. It's crazy. There are 10 SEC players with 10 or more home runs, including a kid from your dopey school, Florida.
Oh, yeah, Florida, yeah.
Who's hit 17 home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, we are 2 weeks into conference play. How many is this kid going to hit?
Probably a lot.
I mean, he's going to hit 40?
Probably.
I mean,
I would bet
don't think
it.
he'll set the record because there's an Oklahoma State guy that got into the 50s years ago. But, I mean, this is crazy. So maybe something's going on there. As far as the wooden bats, I like wooden bats. I have 2 wooden bats. And I have a buddy, and years ago when we were in our 50s, we'd go out and do batting practice with the wooden bats because we thought it was cool because it reminded us of the Little League and Babe Ruth League and American Legion and all that, and we thought it was really cool. And we were all right. Today, no, we don't do that. First of all, if one of us ever got a hold of a ball and hit it at the other one, we'd probably be decapitated. So we don't do that anymore. So I've just got these 2 wooden bats in my closet, and I get them out and swing them every once in a while and look at them and say, yeah, you're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I like wooden bats.
Yeah, me too.
But wooden bats on the college level, totally impractical. First of all, I don't think there's enough wood. What do they make bats out of? Ash? Is that what they're made out of?
I think.
I don't think there's enough ash out there. You'd have to start chopping down ash trees all over the country to make enough bats for all of the college baseball teams, especially when you take into consideration how many of them would be broken.
Yeah, I was going to say they're probably going to be cracked a lot.
So it's not practical to have wooden bats when you've got that many teams involved. It's certainly why they've gone to the composites on every other level, or aluminum, or whatever they're using. I think composite bats are the way to go because you can adjust them. So if they feel like something's going on here, if the baseball changed or the bat needs to be changed, they'll tweak this back. But make no mistake about it, college baseball likes these numbers because it's interesting, right?
It's fun.
You can't dial it back too much because you take the fun out of the game. I think what they were trying to do a few years ago is they were concerned about the bat velocity. Ball was coming off the bats. There were some players that almost got killed with a shot back to the mound. It was coming so fast you didn't have a way to get a time to get out of the way. So if there needs to be an adjustment, and they'll study this at the end of the year, they'll do it. You can do it with these bats and the ball too.
And it will come out at the end of the year if something was different, or something needs to be changed. Rob's of 4516 asked, I know there have only been a few spring practices, but do you have a read yet on how the defense is doing with so many new players and coaches? Do the players seem to be buying in?
They've only had 5 practices. That's 1/3. They've just come off spring break. So it kicks in, the last part of it kicks in, the final 10 practices. Sam hasn't said a lot. What we know is, number one, they're going to a 4-man front on defense. That's the biggest change. The fans are going to love that. And I got to get these names down because I went and looked it up. Let's see, Okay, there's this guy. I don't know if I can pronounce his name. Nico Davier.
Yeah, there you go.
They've got this new position, a new defensive end position. I'm not sure what they call it, but it's new to this defense. Travis Williams is a new defense. Okay. And the whole thing with Williams is to produce more pressure on quarterbacks. Fans love that, right?
Yeah.
Because that was the complaint last year. So you got this new defensive end position, and he has been mentioned by Sam Pittman. It's been really a standout so far. He's a younger guy. They've got a couple of guys transfers in at that position, one from Missouri that is off to a good start, and they both have been mentioned. So it looks like that position, that rush in position, is off to a good start. The linebacker situation looks pretty solid. They've got injuries once again in the secondary. One of these guys, I'm told, has already have to have surgery, one of the transfers, so he's out at least for the spring. I hope it's not. I don't think it's a knee, so he's probably not out for this fall, but out for the rest of the spring. And then Quincy McAdoo, we all remember him, the wide receiver that in the middle of the season agreed to move over and had such a big impact. He's been out, but I think he's going to be back this week. Good. So that's what we know about football so far. We'll know a lot more about football after this next week, because we'll actually be able to go to football and cover it because we don't have basketball that we have to.
I have not been to a single spring practice yet.
I've been to one.
You went to one? Which one did you go to?
First one.
The first one. The first one. We will get to go. Mike, you and I are definitely going to go this week because I want to see how the team looks as well. Small Town Hog 95 says the Hawks seem to have a good amount of in-state talent for recruiting all major sports except football. Mike, besides Northwest Arkansas growing into a major metropolitan area, what do you think would have to happen for this state to produce more Division I caliber football players?
Okay, the reason it's not such a problem in basketball is obvious, because you don't have to have as many players. Like Musselman can go out and get the top 2 players in the state, and he's set with what else he does, the portal and where else he recruits. You couldn't recruit 2 guys in football. That would be an awful year. You'd have to have more than that. Now, typically there's around 6, varies. Does there need to be more? It would help if there weren't. So what's the issue here? Well, there's several things. When I first got here in '75, there's no question that there were more Division I type football players that could help you win in those days. It was the Southwest Conference in the Little Rock area than there are now. Football was a bigger deal back then. I don't know why it happened, because I don't live in Central Arkansas, but somewhere along the line it shifted more to basketball. And if you need any evidence of that, all you have to do is look at that Real Deal on the Hill AAU tournament they have every year.
Yeah.
You would not, if you had that up here, you wouldn't get the attendance that you get down there. That is a basketball area down there. Look at what happens when the Hogs go down there once a year and play in North Little Rock. The place is jammed.
Oh, it is
crazy. They love basketball in Central Arkansas, and it is, to me, it is a bigger deal than football. Well, that hurts football. But I've seen it come back in the last 4, 5, 6 years. There was a time when the 7A West just dominated 7A football. So you have Northwest Arkansas dominating the bigger Little Rock schools, and that's not happened lately. So football's coming back a little bit. So if you in the future, get more guys out of Central Arkansas, and Northwest Arkansas is where the growth is, probably in another 10 or 15 years, you're going to have 1 million people living up here. Then you really are going to get some numbers out of Northwest Arkansas. But having said all that, Arkansas to me is always going to be a school where you have to go elsewhere. Now, it always changes with different coaches. With Sam Pittman, we initially saw he was tapping into this, to the contacts that he had in Georgia, and he continues to do that. But now he's gone down and got assistant coaches with contacts in Florida, so they're into Florida. Yeah. Arkansas has always tried to recruit Louisiana hard. They will continue to do that again. And Oklahoma is a place they look at, Missouri. Texas is the big thing. They're always trying to go into Texas, and I personally believe that Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC will help Arkansas's recruiting in Texas and Oklahoma. Now you say, why? Because those kids would really want to play there if they're going to play against SEC teams. There are always going to be kids that want to go out of state. And when you play a team like Texas once a year, when you play a team like Oklahoma once a year, you get publicity before that game. Yeah. They're talking about your school where they normally wouldn't be. Arkansas doesn't play Oklahoma right now. They don't play Texas right now. So you don't get any publicity during the season. There's no reason for any writers down there to write about you. But when you're playing them, the week of that game, the week after that game, they talk about you. So I think Arkansas's recruiting will be helped in both of those states after they come to the SEC.
Yeah, I think so as well, Mike. And our final question of the show is going to be over talking about football here. Marty Bird's Proxy says new NCAA President Charlie Baker said in an interview that he was wanting to get Congress involved some way with NIL. What part, if any, could government play in it? Typically, things get worse in those instances. Barkley certainly didn't like the idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that believe Congress won't do anything. They'll just mess around with this and realize it's a hot potato and they won't. I don't know. What could they do? I've talked about this before. There is one really clear answer to me, and it's really important that they do this, although I don't know if they would. If you can ever get if they could pass legislation indicating that these athletes are part-time students. They are. They're only allowed 20 hours a week by the NCAA of their sport-related activities. So they're part-time students in that, and you treat it as a job. You make them employees of the university, just like if you worked in the library or somewhere, cafeteria. You're already giving them a scholarship. You're giving them all the stuff that comes with it, room and board. Their medical is paid for. Yeah. That's a huge deal. Yeah. Any of us that look at our paycheck after they take out medical insurance, that is a big deal. So they're already getting really compensated really well. If you throw in money that's equal among all athletes, because this is the only way it's going to work. It has to be fair for all these students. So if you make if they pass legislation that indicates what the fee should be, and obviously it would have to be adjusted to the cost of living in an area. You know, if you're living in California, a certain amount of money every month is not going to be the same as some here. So if they pass legislation that would allow you to be paid a certain amount here and a certain amount there based on a cost of living adjustment, then everybody's basically getting the same. And when you do that, what you're taking out of the equation is buying players, because that's what's happening right now. And think about it, even the NFL doesn't allow that. They've got a salary cap. You draft guys, but then once you've got them, I can't just look at another. If I'm an NFL owner, I can't look at a guy that I want and say, hey, I'll give you more money, come over here. There are rules against that, but there's not right now in college athletics. It's idiotic. So if you address legislation that will address this, if you pass legislation that will address this, then a lot of people are saying, yeah, you get sued by and you'll lose. No, you won't. I'm telling you, I want to see the Supreme Court take this up, because I know what the Supreme Court ruled that caused all this. And it didn't have to do with I have the right to make money, just flat out right to make money as a college athlete. It said that if your school or a conference or the NCAA uses your name or image or likeness to make money and don't give you any of it, you have to give them a part of it.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
So if they want to, all you have to do if you're Congress and legislating this, you can say, now look, if you're a school and you want to sell jerseys with a guy's name on the back and you get part of it and he gets part of it, sure, they can get part of that. But all schools would end up doing that. It's not something where you just say, hey, we can give you more money over here, so come over here.
Right.
They've got to eliminate that. And to me, Congress, clearly the NCAA won't do it, so somebody's got to do it, and they're the guys that need to do it, and somebody's just got to go lobby them and explain to them how important this is. Because if they don't do something, you're going to ruin college athletics. It's going to turn into the highest bidder is always the teams competing, and everybody else that doesn't have money is just out, and that's wrong.
Well, I think the NCAA, the reason why they're hands off is they're worried about Congress coming in and saying, NCAA, I'm sorry, we're putting, we're going to punish you guys now because you went against us. So I think that's why it's so
let them do it. So let them
do it, exactly. So let them come in and say, well, hold on a second here. This is getting a little out of control.
Where people get skeptical is that Congress has a reputation of being a bunch of doofuses that don't ever do what we need. They just do what's good for them. So the fear is they won't even take this up. They go, oh, this is complicated. No, can't do it. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and maybe in Congress, people in Congress might have allegiances to certain teams. You never know. Maybe they're paying for some of their players to come and make their schools great.
No.
I don't know. That could happen too.
But I'm hopeful that they will do something and it will help.
I hope so as well, Mike. We'll see if that comes to fruition anytime soon. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.